Hello, welcome to Unlocking Buddhism. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what would life feel like if we all just slowed down? Not in a drop everything and move to the mountains kind of way, but in the middle of real life, in traffic, at work, at home. What if we approached each moment with a little more clarity, a little more care? That's the question we're exploring today. And along the way, I want to show you what that could actually look like. Not just for society, but for you. What shifts when we stop chasing constant achievement and start valuing awareness instead? What changes when we stop numbing discomfort and learn how to sit with it without fear? And maybe the biggest one, what kind of person do we become when we stop trying to control the world and start learning how to meet it as it is? This isn't a lesson in religion. It's a reflection on life, on what it means to be awake while we're still here. And before we begin, I have a small invitation. As you listen, notice if a single word stands out to you. It might be presence, compassion, or something personal only you will understand. Whatever it is, drop that word in the comments. No pressure. Just a little way to stay connected to yourself and maybe to someone else reading too. What would the world look like if everyone truly lived as a Buddhist? Not just checking a religion box, or attending a few ceremonies, or posting a quote from the Dalai Lama now and then. I mean really living the teachings, letting them guide our daily choices, letting them reshape the way we listen, the way we react, the way we understand life itself. That means living with awareness, choosing kindness over impulse, being present instead of distracted, letting go instead of holding tight to what we can't control. How different would our days look? Would we still compete so fiercely? Would we still feel the need to prove ourselves constantly? Would our cities move at the same speed, or would something soften? It's a strange question, I know. Not because it's silly, but because it's unfamiliar. We're so used to measuring life in terms of progress, production, and performance, that the idea of measuring it by peace, by presence, feels radical, but maybe that's the question we need now more than ever. I remember a story. A Buddhist monk was asked a simple but striking question. He was in his cabin during a storm. The wind was heavy, the rain relentless, and the internet kept flickering in and out. He smiled, calmly, and repeated the question out loud. If the whole world lived as Buddhists, what would happen? Would we stop advancing? Would science collapse? He paused, and then he began to reflect. Not with doctrine, not with theory, but with something deeper, with presence. And he said something that stayed with me. He said, maybe science wouldn't disappear, maybe technology wouldn't vanish, but maybe the need for constant invention, the urge to fix every discomfort, to consume endlessly, to push forward without pause, maybe that would change. Because when people are content, truly content, they don't chase so hard. They don't fear silence. They don't need more to feel enough. What if we didn't need every problem solved by speed and stimulation? What if we valued stillness as much as we do success? And what if, just for a moment, we stopped imagining progress as something you can hold in your hands and started seeing it as something you can feel in your heart? This isn't about fantasy. It's not about everyone shaving their heads or living in forests. It's about a shift, a change in priorities. Maybe a Buddhist world wouldn't be slower in a boring way. Maybe it would be slower in a meaningful way. A world where we pause before we act, where we respond rather than react, where we suffer, yes, but we suffer consciously. And through that, we grow together. And maybe that kind of world starts with one question. What are we really chasing? And what might happen if we stopped? It was the kind of afternoon that invites stillness, the kind where you can almost hear the world exhale. Outside, a soft but steady rain danced on the leaves, tapping the windows in that hypnotic rhythm that seems to ask you to slow down. Inside a small wooden cabin, tucked away from the noise of daily life, a Buddhist monk sat quietly on the floor. No lights, no noise, just the sound of breath and rain and earth. He was supposed to be giving a talk that day, live-streamed to dozens of people. But the storm had other plans. The internet cut out, the power flickered, and the connection was gone. Most people might have given up, rescheduled, apologized, but not him. And he began to speak, not to a camera, not to a crowd, but into the silence, into the moment. He said that sometimes he prefers talking to people who aren't Buddhist. Their questions are different, he explained. Fresh, open. They ask things from the heart. Someone had asked him something a few days earlier that stayed with him. It wasn't complicated, but it was powerful. They said, if the entire world became Buddhist, if everyone practiced it seriously, what would happen? Would science collapse? Would technology stop growing? And the monk sat with that question, not for a minute or an hour, but for days. Not to find the perfect answer, but to feel the truth in it. He said, it's not that Buddhism is against science. It's not that we'd stop exploring or inventing or learning, but something deeper would shift. Because when people begin to really practice, really live this path, they change. They don't just chant or sit quietly. They begin to see life differently. Their sense of urgency softens. Their craving lessens. Their fear fades. They become more patient, more present, less reactive, less hungry for things that don't nourish them. He imagined a world where people no longer scrambled to fix every discomfort with pills, with noise, with more, where getting sick didn't spark panic, but reflection, where people didn't reach first for medicine, but for rest, for silence, for care. Not because they rejected healing, but because they understood that not all pain is an enemy, that some pain teaches, some discomfort reveals, some struggle purifies. He imagined homes where consumption wasn't a reflex, where people didn't chase every new gadget or trend because they didn't need them to feel whole. He imagined a world where happiness wasn't sold in packages, but cultivated in stillness. And then he paused, smiled, not because curiosity would disappear, but because the need to escape would. He explained that going to the moon is not a problem in itself, but it's the spirit behind the action that matters. If we explore because we're running from something, emptiness, loneliness, boredom, then no planet will satisfy us. But if we explore because we're grounded, awake, and at peace, then the journey becomes something else entirely. He imagined a society where people still built things, but with care, where art, science, music, and medicine still existed, but without the same frenzy, without the same grasping, without the fear of being left behind. He looked out the window then, at the rain, and for a long time said nothing. But in that silence, something had been spoken, something we rarely hear, that maybe what the world needs isn't to move faster. It's to remember how to be still, how to listen, how to suffer wisely, how to live with enough. And maybe, just maybe, the most advanced society is one that no longer needs to conquer, because it has already learned how to understand. So what was that monk really pointing to? Beyond the quiet cabin, beyond the rain, beyond the gentle smile on his face, there was something deeper in his words, something ancient, yet incredibly relevant right now. Contentment, not the shallow version that lasts until the next notification, not the kind you get when things briefly go your way, but the kind that grows when you stop needing things to go your way in order to feel okay. The kind that doesn't scream, but whispers. The kind that doesn't depend on your circumstances. It comes from your relationship to those circumstances. This is what Buddhism teaches in its simplest form, that much of our suffering doesn't come from the world itself, but from the way we respond to it. We suffer because we want things to be different, because we grip life tightly, because we resist what is. And the tighter we hold on to our desires, our plans, our expectations, the more it hurts when life doesn't cooperate. The monk wasn't criticizing science or medicine or even ambition. He was questioning the urgency behind them, the desperation, the fear, the blind belief that the answer is always out there. One more thing, one more breakthrough, one more fix. What if the answer isn't out there? What if it's here? What if peace isn't something we arrive at through more, but something we uncover through less? Let's bring this closer to home. Have you ever felt anxious and thought, I just need to fix this now? Maybe it was a health scare, a bad day, a moment of loneliness. You felt it rise up, that discomfort, and without thinking, you tried to cover it. Food, phone, Netflix, work, anything but stillness. Now ask yourself, did it help? Maybe for a minute, maybe it distracted you. But did it really soothe you? Or did it just bury the discomfort deeper? What Buddhism teaches is not to run from pain, but to learn from it, to be present with it, to let it speak instead of silencing it. Because when we stop rushing to escape every uncomfortable feeling, something extraordinary happens. We begin to understand ourselves. We begin to see that so much of our suffering comes not from the situation, but from the way we cling to how we wanted it to be. We expected to be healthy forever, so illness feels like failure. We expected people to behave a certain way, so their choices feel like betrayal. We expected life to unfold according to our timeline, so every delay feels like punishment. But what if life isn't broken? What if the only thing that's broken is the idea that it should always match our preferences? Contentment isn't passivity. It's not giving up or lowering your standards. It's the courage to meet life as it is, not only as you wish it were. When you begin to live like that, even a little, something inside you softens. The world stops feeling so heavy. You stop feeling so at war with reality. And suddenly, you don't need so much. You don't need every conversation to go perfectly. You don't need your life to impress anyone. You don't need to be constantly moving forward to feel worthy. You just need to be present. Because in presence, you find the one thing we're all really searching for, a sense of enoughness, a peace that doesn't depend on perfect conditions. That's the kind of peace the monk was talking about. Not a peace that avoids the world, but one that learns how to be with it, honestly, openly, kindly. And maybe that kind of peace isn't something we invent. Maybe it's something we remember. So what does any of this actually look like? Not in a monastery, not in some idealized future, but here, now, in the messy, unfinished, everyday rhythm of your life. Let's start simple. You're in traffic. You're running late. Horns are blaring. Your mind's racing, and every second feels like an attack. You know the story that usually follows. Frustration, tension, maybe blaming someone else or yourself. But this time, you catch it. You see the pressure rising in your body. You feel your jaw tighten, your shoulders lift, and instead of reacting, you breathe. One full breath. Not to fix anything, just to interrupt the spiral. To remember that being late isn't the same as being lost, that this moment is still yours. It doesn't change the traffic, but it changes you. That's practice. Later that day, you're on a video call. You're talking, trying to explain yourself, and someone talks over you. Again, you feel dismissed, invisible. You know the reflex. Defensiveness, anger, the urge to shut down. But instead of reacting, you pause. You feel the sting, but you don't let it shape who you are. You stay grounded. You speak up, without raising your voice. That's not passive. That's powerful. Quietly powerful. Now imagine this. You come home after a long, overwhelming day. Your mind is foggy. You reach for your phone, maybe a drink, maybe some junk food, whatever you usually use to soften the edge of your exhaustion. But you stop for a second. You sit down. You don't open anything. You just sit. Maybe with a cup of tea, maybe in silence, and you let the discomfort stay. Not because you enjoy it, but because you trust it. You trust that you can hold discomfort without running from it. And you know what happens next. The discomfort passes, not because you escaped it, but because you made space for it. And in that space, you feel something deeper, not pleasure, not distraction, something more solid. That's the beginning of freedom. There are other moments too, bigger ones, moments where the stakes are higher. Maybe someone breaks your heart, walks away, or maybe you lose a job you loved, or your body goes through something unexpected, a diagnosis, a change, a loss of strength, and everything in you wants to collapse, fight, scream, numb, but you don't. You break a little. You cry. You feel everything, but you don't disappear. You stay with yourself. You let the pain be real without letting it define you. And in that pain, something opens. a deeper kind of resilience. Not the kind that makes you tougher, but the kind that makes you softer, more real, more awake. That's the life Buddhism prepares you for. Not a life free from pain, but a life where you're free within the pain. It teaches you that peace isn't about things always going your way. It's about your ability to meet what comes, with less resistance and more presence. It's not glamorous. It's not dramatic. It won't make a good Instagram reel, but it's real. It's when you can sit across from someone you love and not need them to be perfect for you to love them fully. It's when you stop measuring your life by how much you've achieved and start measuring it by how deeply you've lived. It's when you stop trying to escape yourself and finally come home, one pause at a time, one choice at a time. And if you do it once, you can do it again. You're not trying to become enlightened in a day. You're just learning how to stay present in this one. And that might be enough to change everything. So where does this all leave us? The world isn't going to suddenly slow down just because we decide to. There will still be traffic, deadlines, hard conversations, and days that test your patience. The emails won't stop. The problems won't politely wait until you're in a Zen state to appear. But that's not the point. The point is that you might meet those things differently. You might notice your reaction before it takes over. You might catch yourself wanting to run from discomfort and choose not to. You might realize that not every thought needs a response. Not every feeling needs a solution. This isn't about becoming detached. It's about becoming more connected, just in a different way. You're not avoiding life. You're engaging with it more honestly, with less drama and more depth. Maybe for the first time you start noticing your patterns, the way you try to prove yourself in conversations, the way you tense up when someone disagrees, the way you feel silence because stillness feels unfamiliar. You begin to understand yourself, and in that understanding, you start creating space. Space between impulse and action, between emotion and reaction, between fear and decision. And in that space, you're no longer controlled by habit. You're no longer just repeating the same responses day after day, hoping for different outcomes. You start responding instead of reacting. You start choosing instead of chasing. And slowly, that changes everything, not just inside of you, but around you too. People may not notice right away, but they will feel it. You're more patient in conversations. You ask better questions. You listen with less of a need to control the outcome. You become someone others feel safe around, not because you have all the answers, but because you're grounded enough not to need them. And that's how transformation starts, not by changing your identity or adopting a spiritual label, but by showing up to your actual life differently. So no, you don't need to call yourself a Buddhist. You don't need robes, rituals, or mantras. You just need to stay present, curious, honest. That's enough. Because when you stop needing each moment to go your way, you start seeing it for what it really is. Temporary, vivid, alive. You start noticing the small things, like the way someone looks at you when you really listen, or how your breath feels at the end of a long day, or the fact that you can sit with discomfort and not be undone by it. And in those moments, the world becomes less of a thing you have to survive, and more of a place you learn how to be, not perfectly, but fully. So if you're looking for a starting point, don't wait for your schedule to open up. Just notice the next moment that challenges you. Notice how you want to react, and then ask, is there another way? That's all this is. Not a new belief system, just a different way of relating to life. And sometimes that's more than enough. If there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that change doesn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. Sometimes it starts with a single pause, a bit more awareness in a familiar moment, a softer voice in a conversation that used to trigger you, a choice to be present even when you don't feel in control. These small shifts, they add up, and they don't just change how you feel. They shape how others feel around you too. So don't worry about getting everything right. Don't wait for the perfect setup. Just begin, wherever you are, however you are, because if you're still here, listening, reflecting, then maybe something in you is already changing, and that's more than enough to start with. If anything in this video made you think or feel something real, leave a word in the comments. One word, that's it. No explanation needed. And if you want to explore more reflections like this, you're welcome to subscribe. This space is for you. Thanks for being here. Take care of your breath, your mind, your time. See you in the next one.